Hi, my name is Lewers, and I'm really excited today to be in the room live with author of the book The Thrillionaire, Nik Halik. Nik,
Grant, how
welcome
are you?
to the show.
Wonderful, thank you.
The Thrillionaire. It's a pretty interesting
Pretty
term.
catching, yep.
Yeah, pretty catching. And the concept of being a thrillionaire, from what I've seen, is that you've done some incredible things as far as space exploration, going down to the Titanic,
Yep.
sleeping in pyramids. I was on the phone to a friend of mine who knows you quite well, and I said, what? I said, look, what's the deal with this Nik guy? Like, is he the real deal? And she said, yeah. I was in Egypt with him, and he actually rented or paid some money.
Yeah, I asked, mind you, I make a very compelling reason to actually sleep in the pyramid, and I spoke to the applicable authorities, and I asked to be locked in the pyramid overnight.
So you slept in the pyramid.
And so the oldest man-made structure in the world was my private residence for the night.
That's pretty impressive.
So I wanted lights out.
Yep.
And I wanted the doors locked.
Doors locked, lights out.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I got escorted in there, or should I say, ushered in there quietly,
Yep.
midnight, and they came and collected me at 6 a.m. in the morning.
Wow, that would have been amazing.
Amazing. Yeah.
And did you have any epiphanies or realizations, or was there?
Well, first of all, the reason why I did it, because if you want to go back in history, like Napoleon did the same thing. Alexander the Great, Herodotus, Sir Isaac Newton. So these are the coolest cats in history, right?
Right.
And
guilty by association.
Yeah, and there are cats. There are accounts of Napoleon when he slept in the pyramid. When he was left there, and his generals came to collect him in the morning, and he was hovering in the corner. He was all flipped out, and he was shivering, and he apparently experienced something very just
supernatural.
Something very cosmic happened to him.
Yep.
And that was Napoleon back in 1798.
Wow. Did you have anything cosmic happen to you in the pyramids?
You'll have to read the book.
You have to read the book, all right. Now, the thing that kind of first caught my attention was your exploration into space. So I'm from Australia, you're from Australia as well. We're currently sitting in Hollywood, Los Angeles, which is where you live now.
Yeah.
But tell me about the exploration into space.
I started back when I was 4, a boyhood dream,
Yep.
When you sort of like look to your parents and you sort of like, you declare what you want to do in life. And I spoke to my parents and said, hey, I want to become an astronaut.
Yep.
And the funny thing is, my dad was a full-blown communist.
Okay.
My dad said, you're going to become an astronaut, you're going to become a cosmonaut,
Yeah.
So my dad was very pro-Russian, I guess, kind of thing. But, and how many kids, like, tell their parents I want to become an actor or, or an athlete or whatever kind of thing. But I said I wanted to become an astronaut. And I never relinquished control of that dream. I mean, I was
going to say, because like every kid wants to be like a pilot or an astronaut.
It was the coolest thing back then,
Yeah, but you actually went on to do it. That's the
thing too. I mean, I'm a typical Taurian. I'm very stubborn. Perseverance, and I've never procrastinated. So I always knew what I wanted.
Yep.
And but also what I did was too, when I was 8, I also wrote down my goals.
Yep.
My top 10 hit list.
Right.
And basically up on the very, very top was to become an astronaut too. So
how did you arrive at goals at the age of 8? I mean, there's a lot of people out there
absolutely
development.
Yeah.
They're like, oh yeah, you got to set goals, but for an 8-year-old to be setting goals is an interesting thing.
My life story, for the first decade of my life, I was pretty much medically confined to my bedroom. I mean, I was a very sick child.
Wow.
I mean, I had like chronic allergies, and I had a really severe asthma.
Okay.
And I had very paranoid parents, and I was like the pharmaceutical poster boy, I guess, I was basically fed all these pharmaceutical drugs just to sedate my condition, I guess.
Wow.
So, but I never forget, but my parents gave us kids the best gift ever, which was the Encyclopedia Britannica.
Yeah. And,
I became just the biggest fan of the Britannica, and that allowed me to, just read these beautiful large volumes of the Encyclopedia Britannica, and it was through that I wrote down my top 10 goals.
Wow.
And that became my map of the world, because the encyclopedia described the outside world, I guess the boundaries outside my bedroom window.
Okay.
And that's all I had, and that just gave me, I guess, the landscape of all the different visions that I want to pursue in my life.
So those top 10 goals, number 1 was astronaut?
Actually was to become a rock star.
Oh, number 1 was rock star. Okay, and my understanding is you obviously achieved that.
I actually moved to Hollywood.
So this is a picture
I'm
of you.
about 18 years of age, yeah.
Nice hair.
Actually, long hair. But I actually moved to Hollywood when I was 17. I actually went to the Guitar Institute of Technology.
Okay, yep.
And I auditioned and was accepted, because all my mentors were based in Los Angeles.
Yep.
And I figured, well, if I was to take my the music side, the next level,
Yeah.
I had to seek my mentors.
Wow.
And I got to be tutored by them at GIT, just off Hollywood Boulevard.
Wow. And so, and then you played in 3 bands?
Yeah, 3 bands. So I moved here when I was 17. Mind you, I had my first business as a guitar teacher at 14. So it was all basically music based throughout my teenage years.
So as a guitar teacher, so you taught
Yeah.
guitar, took that money, and my understanding, you saved up like
I saved $30,000.
$30,000 at the age of
17.
wow.
And bought a one-way ticket to Los Angeles.
Wow.
So that way, I had to make it work. I had to make it happen.
Yeah.
Because if you buy a return ticket,
Yep.
it's like you're allowing the retreat back home to the
Yeah.
confines and complacency of your parents' home.
Yep.
So I had to make it count. So
Yep.
when I spent 4 years, probably the best 4 years of my life.
Yeah. Wow.
And
So then into being a rock star.
yeah, so back to performing. I mean,
Yep.
in 10 years, we probably did about 3,500 gigs.
Wow.
And I saved my money very wisely.
Yeah.
So all the money from the band.
Hang on, you saved your money wisely. Most rock
I know,
stars
which
kind of
is-
like
I know,
sex,
it's-
drugs, rock and roll.
It's like an
and-
oxymoron, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, you see.
Is that why you're trying to get to space? It's kind of like this world doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah,
I live in a
those
different
boyhood
world.
dreams,
Yeah.
So I saved. I was very diligent. So I was teaching guitar at the time.
Yeah.
I was doing a lot of session work during the day, and at night time I'd be performing.
Okay.
So all the band, all the music, all the money
Yeah.
from the performing gigs wise,
Yeah.
I used that to basically buy residential property.
Right. Back in Australia.
Yeah, back in
Wow,
Australia. So that's where I
okay.
made my first purchase.
And that was at the bottom of a property cycle, or
That was the dip of the recession in
Right.
1991. That was my first property acquisition, I guess.
wow. And did you know? How did you know about property? Did you do?
Well,
a seminar?
all I
Did you,
knew
like-
was, I didn't do any seminars. I had my godfather
Yeah.
said, if you're going to buy property, make sure it's the more closer to the city,
Yeah.
and the more older the property is, and the more leafy area it is,
Yeah.
then you'll do very well.
Okay.
And I chose the suburb of Hawthorne, which is kind of like
I
a
know, yeah.
Manly
Actually, I was just
or your
there.
Paddington,
I was there a week ago.
Yeah,
In Hawthorne.
and
yeah.
the thing about Hawthorne is like all the homes are historic, which
Yeah.
automatically they got that scarcity value
Yeah, yeah,
because
yeah.
they can't be built,
Yeah.
they can't be duplicated,
Yeah.
and they're all solid brick.
Yeah.
And so I made my purchase in this particular court. It was called Finchley Court,
Yeah.
and today I pretty much own most of the court now.
Wow.
Of all the properties in this.
So you've just been playing
yeah,
Monopoly
I've
within
been
this
buying
court.
over the last
Yeah.
20 years.
Right.
Very tightly housed, very
Yeah.
leafy area,
Yeah.
and very close to the city, that inner city.
Wow.
But so I invested all my money in residential.
Yeah.
And then from there, I started investing in the stock market, looking for more cash flow means.
Yeah.
And just I leaped
So property into stocks. Did you ever? You never really were in traditional business, like office 9 to 5.
No,
kind of,
so
it was music into
I've always
property
been self-employed.
Yeah.
And I think, and in retrospect, I look back and I'm thinking, well, that's probably the best thing I ever did, because when you're reliant on somebody else, you sort of disempower yourself, because you're reliant on them, they're reliant on the economy is reliant on the greater macroeconomics of things,
Yeah.
So for me, it was just, I wanted to be in control,
Yeah.
and I'm a real, see, there's 2 things in life I can't control, that's weather and traffic,
Yeah.
but everything else I want to control.
Yeah.
And I was very, very diligent about that. So I've always been self-employed. And I've been very, lucky with that, I guess.
Yeah. 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 And so going back to the childhood, how did you overcome the sickness and
It was all
the
in here.
debilitating? It was all in there.
And I'll tell you why. Because I bought everybody's crap, everybody's
Yep.
bullshit,
Yeah.
the sympathy,
Yeah.
the get well cards, the chocolate, the balloons, and what have you.
Yeah. Wow.
And I basically, I was a victim of sympathy.
Wow.
And it came a point where I just said no to everything.
Yeah.
And I started rejecting the pharmaceutical drugs that were prescribed to me.
Wow.
And for me, I just wanted to prove, I guess, the
When you
pharmaceutical.
say rejecting at a cellular
want
level,
to-
or rejecting just saying I don't want them?
Exactly.
Right.
See, I wanted to prove the doctors wrong
Yeah.
and the pharmaceutical world wrong.
Yeah. Wow.
Because by being sedated on a constant basis, you're not giving your immune system enough time to just strengthen, I guess.
Yeah.
But also on a psychological front, I mean, when everybody's, I was buying everybody's sympathy, and I started feeling sorry for myself, kind of
Yeah.
thing. So it was around 11, 12 that I started to see some, a greater improvement in my health.
Yeah.
And by 13 to 14, I mean, asthma was a historical component, and I no longer had allergies.
Wow. And so is that part of where the zest of life comes from? Is that ability to, having
Yeah,
been
for me,
locked
absolutely,
away and it's like, oh, finally I'm out.
Yeah, I mean, you think about it, it's like, I mean, you knew this outside world existed.
Yeah, from the
and you know,
encyclopedias.
we didn't have like a television kind of
Yeah.
thing. We had an old black and white television, but that was in the living room. But all I had was Encyclopedia Britannica.
Yeah, wow.
And you know, this beautiful world existed out there. And so that's why I've always just, you know, I have a passion for life, you know what I mean?
Yeah, you do.
And you know, and I love you know, immersing myself in different cultures. I love traveling. I've probably done about 115 countries now, you know?
Wow.
And you know, according to the United Nations, there's about 220 countries.
Wow.
So you know, my goal is to visit every country, not just like, you know, overnight at the airport or whatever you, but to like immerse yourself with the culture.
And so, going back to that list of goals, so there was
So we have the rock star thing.
Yep.
To become a millionaire.
Yep.
To have exotic homes around the world. To run with the bulls in Pamplona.
Wow.
And I'll tell you why that one came about, because funny enough, I was in the band.
Yep.
You know, we were probably like gigging for like 10, 12 years, and I became complacent. I became very comfortable, I guess, being uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And I just, I did my last gig, and back in the band room, I just said, guys, this is it, I can't do this anymore.
Wow.
You know, like, I just became very sterile, very regimented.
Yep.
You know, and I
Which
just...
is weird for a rock star, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, look, there comes a point, irrespective of how good the opportunity is, you still need to turn that page, you know?
Yeah.
And, you know, I guess my passion became somewhat extinguished, you know?
Yeah.
And, you know, how do you stir the soul? How do you awaken, you know, just how do you ignite that imagination again?
Yeah.
By being chased by 20 tons of sirloin meat.
Yeah.
You know, and I ran with the bulls in Pamplona.
Yeah.
And the first run, I did 2 runs. The first run took about, you know, it lasted 8 seconds.
Wow.
You know, and I was...
So that's where you run and then bail out?
I mean, I ran with a foreigners run, which is probably the most ridiculous thing, because they run at the very, very start, where the bulls are fresh.
Oh, wow.
You know, and I lasted 8 seconds. I mean, I tripped over, it was bloody, I had blood gushing here, glass lodging him. The second day I ran with the locals. You know, and they've got centuries old tradition, and they're more, you know, they're more wise.
Yeah.
They run towards the very latter part, just before the bulls actually make it to the stadium, because by then the bulls are like absolutely exhausted. So, but that was a real awakening, because that was probably that was like about 4 days after my last gig, and I just needed that.
Yeah.
You know, just to feel alive again.
Yeah. So something you brought up was the locals, and that knowledge helped you more so than you know, running with the tourists. I'm guessing that metaphor would probably play out in a lot of areas of your life. Who have been the locals for you? Like, who have been the mentors that have sort of helped you understand property, shares, the psychological side? Have you been involved in the personal development industry?
Not so much. I mean, I discovered the personal development industry and the wealth creation industry by default in my early 30s.
Right.
And it was only because when I established my wealth, my foundation, that investor clubs approached me and said, hey, you know, we have 300 members. Would you like to share your story, how you invested?
Yeah.
And why they were interested in my story was because I came from the music industry.
Yeah.
And first of all, when you come from the music industry, very few people survive it.
Agreed, yeah.
And those who do survive it, you know, their lives are pretty much dilapidated, I guess, you know.
Yeah.
But you know, I came out of it, and you know, I was a millionaire, not because of the money that I was generating, but I found better gainful employment for the money that I did earn.
Yeah.
You
but that just was common sense to you, or did you read a book? Was there a moment where you went?
There wasn't really anything in the early 1990s.
Right.
I mean, there wasn't like seminars kind of thing. I mean, you know, I only got exposed to the seminar industry in the late 1990s.
Okay.
But there wasn't really anything. And I just remember what my godfather said, like, you know, make sure you buy historic property. There can't be, that has a scarcity value.
Yeah.
It's close to the city, that inner city.
Yeah.
And it's amazing because those properties have like quadrupled.
Yeah.
You know, I remember my first purchase was 138 grand.
Yeah.
And it's funny because a couple of years prior to that, my parents bought their house for $95,000. And here I am, I just paid $138,000, you know.
Yeah.
But that same property is now worth $650,000.
Yeah.
And I own many of those in the same particular court.
Yeah.
So I just leapfrogged and leapfrogged. And then I realized that, well, hey, you know, this is all about capital growth. Plus, you know, I was fortunate because I bought at the right time.
Yeah.
You know, and I remember when I was buying and it was around the same time that I read J. Paul Getty's book, you know, about when 80% of newspaper sentiment saying buy, you sell.
Sell, yeah.
Or when 80% of newspaper sentiment is saying sell,
Sell.
you buy. So, I mean, it was amazing. I read that book at the same time, and I'm thinking, all the media pundits were saying, the end of property, property doom and gloom.
Yeah.
And I just kept on buying and buying and buying, whereas my band members were basically sleeping all day, rocking up to sound check, going back home to sleep, and then going to the gig.
Yeah.
And I'm just thinking, well, there's more to life than that.
Yeah.
I mean, I loved the lifestyle of being in the band, but there was the accountable side, I guess, too.
Yeah.
And going back to my original goals, what did I want? What did I desire in my life?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, what are the other things that were on the to-do list?
To have lunch on the Titanic.
Lunch on the
And I'll
Titanic.
explain that one. Most people will say, well, how many people will say have lunch? But the reason being is because I thought the Titanic was in one piece. I thought it was like, like everybody. I thought it was like a tourist attraction. You can go down there. When I was a little kid. I'm thinking,
okay. Oh, so you're going back to an 8-year-old, like have lunch on
I mean,
Titanic.
I thought
right.
hey, that'd be really cool to do. It's like but it wasn't until the late 80s that they actually found it.
Right.
And it was actually in 2 pieces. So this is before that. I wrote down to have lunch, and I thought, well, going to sea is kind of cool, but having lunch in that's pretty cool, But little did I realise that it was like how many years later that I worked out a way to go down to the bottom. Actually, the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean, 5 miles deep.
Wow. And so you went in a submersible, like a little...
A pressurised biosphere.
Yep.
There was 3 of us, and it actually takes 4 hours to sink all the way down to the very, very bottom.
Wow.
And it's just the most surreal thing. And I'll tell you what was really incredible was the amount of suitcases, leather suitcases. Now go back to the industrial age, suitcases were made out of leather, and leather doesn't decompose.
Oh, really?
And leather shoes don't decompose.
Wow.
So they had the bow and the stern, and you had a debris fill with just suitcases. The immigrants' dream, fleeing the old world, going to the new world.
Yeah.
And my parents were immigrants too, so it was a very emotional experience.
Yeah.
Plus the amount of shoes, they were like this.
Oh, wow.
Where once upon a time a body was there.
Yeah.
And a body would decompose, including the skeleton within 2 years.
So what you're saying is invest in leather. Got it.
There's a thing to this, isn't it?
So what was next on the to-do list?
Climbing the highest mountains of the world.
Okay. And you've done, was it 5 of
I've
the
got
7?
2 more to go now too. So.
Wow.
And this was in the Andes, the rooftop of South America.
Yeah, wow.
But so there's been, and some of the other goals were to become an astronaut.
Uh-huh.
And you got to understand this, that when I was young, I had glasses, okay? Whatever classes I attended at school, I was failing maths.
Yeah.
So my qualification in regards to becoming an astronaut, forget about it. But a gentleman by the name of Dennis Tito in 2001 paid the Russians $20 million to rocket to the International Space Station.
Yeah.
So I figured, well, hold on, if this guy can pull it off and do a private transaction with the Ruskies, then I can do so too.
Yeah.
So I managed to track him down. He lived in Pacific Palisades.
Wow.
And within a week and 2 weeks of just ringing up and just harassing him, I finally got invited to his house.
Wow.
And he has this beautiful $50 million home, and he sat me down and he goes, okay, this is what you need to do. So within a week, I flew to Russia, and this is 2003, and I enrolled in the Russian Orbital Space Program.
Wow.
But you have to pay a deposit to cover your training, which was non-refundable.
Yep. So whether you make, got it.
Yeah, so this was like $3 million just for your training.
Wow.
And mind you, then you've got to go for your medical screening, your psychological profiling. And if you failed those 2, then that money was non-refundable.
Wow.
So there was a lot on the line, And medical testing.
And at the time, could you just write the check for $3 million to go do that?
Or I deposited $3 million into the
so
account.
It wasn't like a future, like for example, I heard a story the other day from Tony Robbins himself. Was telling a story about he supposedly lived in a castle and all of that, but he now tells a story that when he first bought it, he couldn't afford it.
Right.
Like it was a real punt on the. It's like if I buy this thing, I better go to work to get the money to buy it.
Yeah.
Was this a future punt for you? Like,
no.
as in, like this
well,
was a
the $3
big
million was up front.
Yeah.
And before they start the screening process, you got to pay $3 million.
Wow.
And that covered the medical, and the medical and the psychological screening was about 2 months.
Yeah.
And they've got to make sure that you have the right stuff that you can handle all these ridiculous and most experimental tests, I guess, and this was in Russia. I mean, crazy stuff. Then you've got all your classes. So, I mean, I was in the same classroom, learning theory, learning everything about the whole program, survival, learning the capsule.
Wow.
I mean, I had to learn Russian too, because the Russian Soyuz rocket is what we rocket to the International Space Station, is all in the Cyrillic alphabet.
All right.
And it was probably the equivalent to like learning an alien language.
Yeah.
So I had to go through the entire process.
Was there a lot of vodka drinking as well?
Isn't
Isn't that part of the whole Russian?
I'll tell you a story here. I probably drank more during my space training than all my years playing in a band. That's true.
That's true.
I mean, I really like some of the instructors. I mean, and some of the cosmonauts, this is the funniest thing, right? Because we had to go to the gym every day to train, cardiovascular-wise.
Yeah.
Some of these guys will have a flask of vodka. These are cosmonauts, These are like Russian heroes, and they'll be like smoking
on the treadmill.
and they got a flask of vodka, and I'm thinking, how do these guys pull it up? But you know what? These guys they're just amazing. It's like because the Russians have they've served the longest time in space.
Wow.
And I might as well say now, but I've heard stories that in certain capsules that there is alcohol in orbit.
Wow.
But that's as far as I'm going to go with that story right now.
Yeah. Okay. We'll just leave it there. So you went through training.
Yep.
And how long did that take?
So I started in 2003,
Yep.
and then in 2007 I had to move there on a full-time basis, as well as 2008.
Wow.
And I completed the entire program.
So you're actually a qualified
I'm
civilian.
a fully flight certified civilian astronaut. So I'm not government funded.
No.
I mean, I train alongside NASA astronauts.
Okay.
And NASA was paying about $70 million to the Russians to have them train the astronauts.
Wow.
So I was in the same classroom, but I was self-funded.
Yeah.
And there's only been 6 of us in history who have been self-funded. But it's just that dream. I mean.
And so then you've gone into space.
I've already gone edge of space, suborbital. I have an upcoming flight.
Because there's some amazing video footage of you that I've seen on your site. I think it's the Thrillionaires.com. And of you going, like I was watching with fascination, you getting your seat molded look like a huge,
absolutely,
a huge
experience. It's the real deal.
The real deal, and
it's just incredible.
And then you spinning around in
zero gravity. So I have an upcoming flight to the International Space Station. So what I got to do now is once you get mission allocation status, you get assigned to a crew. Then I'll have to go back for a period of 2 months to train with the crew once again, just to familiarise myself with the new systems.
You're going to pony up some cash for that, right, I'm guessing?
Well, the flight is 27.
Wow.
The training was 3.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, but you've also got to place a deposit too for your flight.
Yep.
Otherwise...
Right, so it kind of makes first class from Sydney to LA look a little cheap.
But it came back to the boyhood dream.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why you gotta love kids. I mean, they look you square in the eyes with fun, wavering down to say, I want to become
an astronaut. Yeah.
But I didn't relinquish that dream. I didn't know how I was going to pull it off.
Yeah.
But and then the funny thing is, when I was 4, my father said, "You're not going to become an astronaut. You're going to become a cosmonaut." It's weird that I had to utilise the services of Russia.
Yeah.
And
let me ask you this: how much of life do you think, for you and your experience, has been? How much of it is free will, and how much of it is almost destined? Like, I'm sure you must have those experiences.
An element of his destiny, definitely.
Yeah, there is, isn't there? There
because
seems to be this
we're the result of every decision that we make.
Yeah.
And the thing is, there's a lot of decisions that I made in the past, and it's amazing. Like I have those deja vu moments.
Yeah.
Because
it's like 10 years ago I set myself up to be.
Yeah, it's weird. I mean, just the way the whole industry works. But I'll tell you a funny story. One of my childhood heroes was an animated cartoon hero called Tintin. I'm not sure if anybody, and Tintin was the whole series of Tintin was written back in the 40s and the 50s. And Tintin was a mountain climber. Tintin went to space. Tintin, so many times for life I've had those Tintin deja vu moments.
Yeah, wow.
In fact, my dog looks like Tintin's dog.
Right.
Because Tintin took his dog to space, and my dog, it's weird because I took her to pick her just recently, and she had a haircut. And when they finished with it, I'm thinking, damn, she looks like Snowy, Tintin's dog now. It was just one of those weird, one of those deja vu moments again, But it's
because I've heard you say I wrote the script of my life.
the screenplay. That's what I did. I wrote the screenplay,
and, you're just
and
acting it
I
out
was
now.
the actor at all times.
Yeah.
But I live life on my terms.
Yeah.
But
and that's what I find fascinating about you, and it's something that Matt upstairs in the control room said was he just goes like, wow. But how do you make that money? Like, because there's a lot of people. Like, I know some very, very wealthy people. They fly around on private jets. They, worth hundreds of millions of dollars. They do it, but they're still.
Grant, I've never owned a car in my life.
You've never owned a car, so you live a very understated life and fund your dreams.
Yeah, I'm probably the least materialistic person in the world.
Right.
But when I do invest, I invest wisely.
Yeah.
In fact, the simple rule that I've used was like, if it moves, don't invest in it.
If it moves, don't invest in it. Okay.
Exactly. So, I've always bought property.
Yep.
And not just any property like, or speculative property, but just residential.
Yeah.
And the thing is, I've never sold.
Yeah, wow.
And I've used that foundation. And don't forget, too, in the early 1990s, when people were selling property very, very cheap. I guess it's kind of like buying property now, you know. But I bought a lot of it.
Yeah.
And and I've always been acquiring every year of my life.
Yeah.
And I've never sold it. And I've just used that as leverage.
Yeah.
Using lines of credit from the banks.
Yeah.
Use that money, and then invested it elsewhere.
Elsewhere. Yeah.
And then I was using like different strategies within the stock market for more cash flow to service a line of credits, and then just utilizing the bank's money because the banks don't have the money.
Yeah.
The banks just digitally print money.
Yeah.
They don't have the physical money. For every $10, $1 is physical, $9 is digital.
Yeah.
So I'm using the bank's imaginary money.
Imaginary money.
And I'm using that imaginary money to pluck more money out of thin air.
Yeah.
You know? And then it's just the same cycle back into property.
Yeah.
But then, in the last 15 years, I started investing in a lot of businesses.
Yeah.
And then
what's the biggest mistake you've made as far as business or investment?
Never borrowing. I should have borrowed more money.
Should have borrowed more money, really?
I should have borrowed more money in the early days.
Right.
And the thing is because, I got to what I thought was like a ceiling level.
Yeah.
And everyone's going, you're crazy, you're absolutely crazy. And I understand this, I had an older brother who has never borrowed money from the bank. When he bought his house, he paid cash. Mind you, it took him 7 years to save it.
Yeah.
And in 7 years, what did property do? It went up. So totally defies logic, he's thinking. But I should
because it's just being printed, right?
Exactly. But I should have borrowed more money. It's like, and that's probably my biggest mistake on the investment front, I guess.
Yeah.
But,
and so then for you, you've gone into, so obviously there's a lot of lifestyle that you live as far as the traveling. It's just more pursuing of your dreams, isn't it?
Yep. My investments, the revenue of my investments, basically services and funds and furnishes my lifestyle.
Yeah.
And when I say lifestyle, I'm not talking about like Richie parties and just like limousines kind of thing. Although my dog travels in a limousine. This is weird.
Dog travels in a limo. Okay.
I know. For some reason, when I say limousine, I just thought of my dog. My dog just went up on. My mother was on holidays, okay?
Yeah.
And we sent a dog up to accompany her, and we had somebody pick her up from the airport, and we had a private limo driver pick up the dog. Why I'm sharing this with you right now, I have no idea. But you said limousine.
You're just making the point that I don't travel in limos, but my dog does.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. But I can't believe I actually shared that story. But
there's a method to your madness. I'm not going to question it. I'm to be honest with you, I'm at that point where I'm almost a bit seminared out. I've read that many books, and there's been, and I think I said to you before off camera, it's kind of like there's a lot of people that say one thing and write in books and speak on stage about one thing, and then how they live and their lives are two completely different things, and that's why I made that phone call to a friend of mine who knew you quite well, and I was like, okay, like seriously, like give me the dough, like give me the. She was like, no, he's the real deal, like he's real, like, and that's the part that I find interesting is that you just do have that humble desire to live your dreams.
But I'm passionate about life. I love life,
But you're not driven by money, are you?
No. Money is just a vehicle for me to go out and and just see the world and immerse myself in all the different cultures. Yeah. So, for me, it's just the adventures because that's priceless.
Yeah.
Whether you're worth $10 million or $50 million, it's irrelevant. It's like, it's the memories. What have
Yeah.
you seen in your life? What have you experienced in your life?
Because I've checked out Thrillionaires.com,
Yeah.
and on there you have you basically allow people to create their own bucket list. So it's free to join, correct?
It's free to
So it's
join.
like a community.
And
it's like a
it's
Facebook
a community for like,
of-
anybody wants to live life on their own terms
Yep.
and to script their own lives as opposed to, having it written by somebody else's personal agenda.
Yeah.
And it's, so long as you've got a pulse, you love life and you want to
Yeah.
extract as much out of it
Because
as
I
possible.
noticed some people I just want to go camping for for a period of time, and I'm next to someone who's gone to space. But
The
what
fact
you're saying is
irrespective
that's
of what
my
it is,
dream. Your
it's
dream is
doing
different.
something,
Yeah.
outside normality.
Yeah.
And that's where you really discover yourself.
Yeah.
It's that time where you where you're basically a different perspective kind of thing.
Yeah.
And that's what the whole Thrillionaires movement is.
Yeah.
And the thing is, it's free to join, and with the goals too. You're being held accountable to it.
Yeah.
So we've got you've got to nominate by this day, and the system will just constantly just harass you and say, hey, how's it going?
Yeah.
But by the way, it's
Yeah.
like you're on Amber Alert.
Yeah.
You got 5 days here.
Yeah.
So and that's the most important thing with goals too. It's spoken words evaporate, but written words they're going to leave impressions.
Yeah.
So the most important thing is having somebody hold you accountable.
Yeah.
And for me, when I write down those goals, I share it with everybody. Because that way it's like,
You're accountable.
exactly. But you've got to live it. You've got to imprint it on the sailor front too. So
It's hard for me though, because you don't come across as somebody with a huge ego, but I find that most people with goals can be so single-mindedly focused and driven that they often don't see the damage it can do to relationships in the moment. It's so I'm so get out of my way, I've got to get here. Whereas there's almost a slowness and a humility to you, and then again, that's what my friend was saying. It was just no. He's calm about it too. He's not like a.
He's calm about it.
Yeah, they're not everyone get out of my way. I got to go do this thing. It's not.
Granted, there's a timing. Life is all about timing.
Yeah.
And it's amazing. Like the cycle that I've gone. I could not have done the astronaut thing if I didn't do this.
Yeah.
So I just leap right from one to the other. And and the number one goal is to walk the lunar surface of the moon.
Yeah,
now.
wow.
I have no idea, once again, and it's 2010 now.
Yeah.
I have no idea how I'm going to pull that off, but
Yeah.
I believe by 2025,
Yeah. So 15
that
years.
there will be a way I'm going
Yeah.
to do so. In fact, the Russians, for $100 million, can actually take it to the far side of the moon, where the one that's been ravaged by all the meteors.
Right.
But that's $100 million, okay?
Yeah.
But I want to walk the lunar surface of the moon.
Right.
But so anyway, so I'm going to go to the International Space Station. But my contingency, if we don't have the technology, we have the technology, but we don't have the money
Yeah.
to invest to go and land on the moon. Even the American government has just given up on that plan.
Yeah.
They had something called the Constellation Program, and Obama just scrapped it, saying too expensive.
Yeah.
But back in the 70s, we went to the moon,
Yeah.
only because 4% of the American GDP was used to fund the lunar missions. So my contingency is, if the technology and the funds are not there, or any government cannot take me, so I can land and walk the lunar surface of the moon,
Yeah.
I've already paid an American consortium that upon the expiration of my life,
Yeah.
my crematorial remains will be rocketed to the moon.
Wow.
So I'm going to make it there.
So you're there. You've got your backup plan. It's locked in.
It's locked in.
Yeah.
It's otherwise I'm going to complete the 10 goals,
All right.
But
So this is a good transition into what I wanted to talk to you about with a company that you created called ShareLord.
ShareLord, which is
And-
one of the like a stock market product, which
Yep.
is which was instrumental for me back in the mid 1990s in regards to generating revenue.
Yeah.
And we have a lot of clients that utilize the same system too.
So the concept behind ShareLord is renting out shares. So you're
Yeah.
putting in, because the reason why I said that it's a good transition is that you've already putting your stop loss there. Like you've already got you've already got that. Okay, I know worst case scenario. I'm going to the moon in ashes, and so let's transition. Let's segue this into shares. Explain to me the stock market strategy.
Okay, first of all, the stock market's very speculative.
Yes.
Most people are incredibly intimidated.
Yeah.
So I looked at the stock market and I wanted to find the most conservative strategy.
Yep.
People think buying.
Yeah, you don't seem like a big. Well, you seem like a
I-
big risk taker
mind
with
you,
your life, but financially
I
not so much.
calculate risk.
Yeah.
Some of the things that I do, some people consider it very dangerous, but I calculate the risk. But with the stock market, I wanted to find something more conservative than actually just buying shares. And I looked at the relationship in property, for example. A person will buy property and they will rent out the property to a tenant.
Mm-hmm.
The tenant will pay the landlord rent.
Mm-hmm.
So for the landlord, so long as there's a lot of demand,
Mm-hmm.
there's a guaranteed rental income for him.
Yep.
So I figured, well, is there something like that type of relationship, but in the stock market? And it turned out there was. There was this obscure little strategy, you know, which was formulated back in 1973 that very few people knew about. In fact, I would say less than 1% of the population that are invested in the stock market, even though this actual strategy exists.
So this is it, where you own the shares.
We own the shares, and you can actually rent
sell
it.
the option.
Yeah, well, you can actually rent it out to a tenant.
So when you say rent it out, you're talking the option.
That's correct. We are selling the options to the actual share.
Yep.
And I'm just using
because a lot of people will sell they'll sell the option, but they don't actually own the share. So you'll actually buy
naked
the
writing.
Yeah,
and it's very, very dangerous.
That's what I thought. Right. So you actually buy the share.
We own the underlying physical asset.
Yep. So you own the underlying physical asset.
So what we do is, you know, as a share lord.
Yep.
So
I like the name too. Share lord.
If you just correlate the other share lord landlord relationship kind of thing, what we're doing is we're creating a segment of the marketplace. So in order for these speculators to play in the sandpit of speculation, they have to pay the owner of the shares a premium.
So an option is
it's a contract.
It's a contract which gives you the option to
buy
the share at a particular price.
The right, but not the obligation.
Yeah,
to
not
buy
the obligation.
Our shares.
So if the stock price goes down, they don't. Then they just walk away and they've lost
exactly.
their option fee.
You know what they're doing is very speculative because they're hoping. See, their entire paradigm is all about hoping, wishing. You know, the stock price will do whatever. But all I'm interested in is, just like a landlord, if you rent out a property, let's say your property's gone down $50,000, you can still rent out your property, can't you?
Yeah.
As a share lord, I still rent out my shares irrespective of what the market does, up, down or sideways. Because for me, the name of the game is just that cash flow.
Sure, but if you own 100,000 BHP shares and the global financial crisis kicked in,
but I wouldn't invest in BHP. It doesn't meet the criteria.
Right, okay, but whatever criteria you have. But when global financial crisis kicked, I mean, you were watching your actual asset drop, but you were still writing.
Most of the positions have insurance policies.
Okay, and that's where you got the put?
Yeah, very good. So what we do is, see, as a share lord, and for the United States here, we only do this strategy in the US.
Oh, okay.
It's 3 to 9% of the value of the shares. That's what we receive in rent on a monthly basis.
On a monthly basis?
That's
Is that compounded?
Basis. No, that's on a monthly basis. Compounded, we're talking about anywhere between, you know, you work it out, 36% to 108%.
Hey Matt, I think that's how he got to
the
moon.
If you annualised it. But I'll show what I mean. See, if we're generating 3 to 9%, that's the rental income that the option buyer is paying to the share lord in order to have that contract.
Right.
That's how it works.
Yeah.
So in order for these guys, you know, to have those contracts, you get paid guaranteed. That's upfront.
Yeah.
So you know exactly how much money you generate before you even click for that transaction.
Wow.
So what we do is this: we create a market for these guys, and it's kind of like if I was to use a metaphor like the goldfields. Who made the money in the goldfields? Let's say
my understanding is the guy selling the jeans, but
the California gold rush or whatever, you know. There was two types of individuals, right? There was one type who were up to the knees in mud, paying for gold with the hope of making the money. That's the option traders. The other side was the savvy side. They're more astute investors. I mean, on the gold fields, they were selling the pans, selling the picks, and selling the shovels. That's what a share lord does. We sell the instruments for this lot to play with.
Right.
You know?
Got it.
And that's why this is far more conservative, because we can also use a portion.
Which makes sense, because to understand like a rock star who gets up early, goes and teaches music, and then and then invests in property, and then turns up for sound check, and then actually does the gig, and then actually is saving money. This strategy makes sense. Like when I hear, it's like, oh, okay, yeah, this is it's not speculative. It's not get rich overnight.
Because I don't want to be glued to a screen or glued to drawing charts.
Right.
For me, I wanted something very, very passive. But it was, when you look at 3 to 9% on a monthly basis. Now this is what this is the whole aspect of leverage. See, I was using the bank's money in the mid-1990s. And listen to this. A line of credit back in the 1990s was around 10%.
Wow.
Per what? Per annum.
Oh, wow.
Can you see the arbitrage now?
Well, I can, but my brain's not fast enough
Okay.
to do the maths on it.
Think of
But
this.
I know what you're saying.
You're
It's
earning-
like
you're
you're paying
gen-
10% per annum, but you're earning like
10% per annum
6
from the
to
banks.
9.
So you know the bank's imaginary money?
Yeah.
Well, I was using the bank's imaginary money so I can pluck more money out of thin air utilizing this strategy.
Yeah, right.
Now, did I have foundation? Did I have equity?
No.
I
Oh, you
raised
had equity in the
properties.
property, right?
You know, I had 5 years of good equity growth
Yeah.
because by 1995, the economy started on an upward rise.
Yeah.
And my properties had, bang, within 5 years had doubled.
Wow.
That's free equity just there.
Yeah.
You know, and multiply that with however many properties that you did have.
Yeah.
So, when the line of credit is costing you 10% per annum,
Yeah.
and mind you, don't forget the interest is 100% tax deductible too.
Mm.
And I was generating 3 to 9% on a monthly basis.
Wow.
You work it out. The first 2 months, you'll pay back the entire bank's interest.
Yeah.
And you've got 10 months
To make
free
your-
use of the bank's imaginary money.
Wow.
So you can pluck more money out of thin
Yeah.
air.
And so you're now out teaching this strategy, like
So
do you
yeah,
personally?
so no, I no longer teach it, but
You don't teach it.
I have.
You're too busy training to go to space.
Yes, I'm too busy doing a halo jump off Mount Everest.
Yeah, I did. Okay, so this was it because we've got made. A friend of mine on Facebook said like, oh, you should check out Nik.
Yeah.
Or actually,
I did it on
think
my birthday. I do something really crazy on my birthday just to remind myself what life's all about. You know, like that time when I left the band,
Yeah.
and I need to like just,
Yeah.
I need that mental stimulation, and I need that, to back on the edge kind of thing. I just needed that on my birthday, and I think, I'm not one for parties. Like hey, blow out the candles kind of thing.
Yeah.
I know. For me, it's just
Do something crazy.
Your day should be like a celebration, but also a time of reflection.
Yeah.
And also, it just realigns my thoughts and just realigns my goals because I've got that top 10 goal list,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and it's always there.
It's always there.
It's in my face every day,
So take us on that. You flew to the height of Everest.
5,000 feet just above the summit of Everest,
Yep.
and jumped out.
With oxygen mask.
Yeah, I was all decked out, oxygen and what have you, and yeah.
Oh, is that no? That's not. That
That's
was
a different one.
That's a different image.
That's in
not the
Kazakhstan.
crazy- Oh, that's
Yeah.
Kazakhstan. All right, just Kazakhstan. All right.
Actually, go back to that photo. This is a Soviet nuclear bomber
Wow.
that was used back in the 50s and the 60s during the Cold War.
Wow.
And this once upon a time was loaded with nuclear missiles,
Wow.
which were going to be used to bomb the United States.
Wow. Isn't it amazing?
A lot of history here. I mean,
Yeah.
a lot of these instruments over here, this is from the 60s. Mind you, some of it's been revamped, but a lot of history. And if you can look over here, this glass,
Yeah.
this is where the bombardier will look down.
Yeah. Good there.
Yeah. But
So, as far as your lifestyle goes, I mean, I know that you've just recently flown back from watching World Cup in South Africa. How was that?
well,
was cold, wasn't
watching
it?
the demise of Australia.
Yeah,
and,
demise of Australia.
then I was supporting Greece. Then I was
Yeah.
supporting the United States.
Yeah.
And now I'm supporting Argentina. Yeah.
And but from your day to day, I mean, how often do you need to check in as far as your trading goes and those sorts of
I probably do
things?
about an hour a day.
An hour a day. Yeah.
Yeah, an hour a day. But I'm always doing business. Like I was in Johannesburg, and funny enough, I was at a club after the Argentina-Greece game where Greece was slaughtered.
Yeah.
But I at the bar, I met some business people who run some investment clubs.
Yeah.
And we started speaking, and they had their iPhones, and they did a Google search, and they go, "Wow, you do this?" I go, "Cool." And they go, "Well, we've got some investors. We've got about 200 people in our clubs. Well, do you want to do a presentation?" So it's really interesting. Like it's the same thing that happened when I left the band. I mean, I went backpacking around the world for a couple of years.
Yeah.
Then I came back, and all these investment clubs, had heard about my investment exploits, I guess.
Yeah.
And I said, "Hey, do you want to speak to our members?"
Yeah.
So that's how I sort of came into that by default.
Yeah.
So I mean, I'm always networking,
Yeah.
I'm always meeting people, and I'm just I share what I do, and if people want to invest in that the paradigm of investing,
Yeah.
by all means.
So if I wanted to, shouldn't say if, I do want to learn how the ShareLord system works. Best
For
place
ShareLord?
to start
Probably,
is,
there's probably a site where they can get some free information.
Yep.
It's called ShareLordMillionaire.com.
ShareLordMillionaire.com.
Yeah.
So go check that out.
That's for
and then
ShareLord.
that's the best introduction into understanding
Yeah, and
that
there's a
trading
whole
strategy.
series of little videos.
Okay.
And you can go out there and just and see if the strategy fits your investment profile.
Yeah.
It is conservative,
Yeah.
but I like conservative because if it's conservative, it means it's consistent.
Yeah.
I'm not into the speculative, exorbitant gains and speculative donations back to the marketplace. I want certainty.
Yeah.
Everything that I do is based on certainty.
Yeah.
I want control.
Yeah.
In everything that I do.
Well, I guess you've got to make 27 million between now and however long it takes you. So is there a launch date that you kind of
well, we were originally scheduled for March of 09.
March of 09.
Then we got bumped off that flight.
Okay, so because what would happen is you have the 2 lead astronauts, and then you sit.
Basically, we've got the commander and we've got 2 mission specialists. I've been trained as a mission specialist.
Right.
And
that's pretty cool.
It's
Use that
cool.
as a pickup line. It's like, what do you do? I'm a mission specialist. In fact, I'm going to use that tonight.
Yeah. So that's basically how it works. So right now I'm just at limbo right now.
Yeah.
But I'm living here now, and I've actually just signed a production deal with a production house in regards to my own reality TV show called The Thrillionaires.
Oh, awesome.
And that's why I'm here in Hollywood now.
Okay.
So
cool.
I sort of figured, well, and I come full circle now, which is kind of cool. So
yeah, that'll make a great show. So explain the concept of
the premise is viewers send in the videos, and I select who I'm going to, take along on one of my crazy journeys or adventures around the world. So I rock up to the workplace, take him into like a waiting limo, into like a waiting Learjet, and then we go around the world to this crazy adventure.
Yeah.
And then along the way, teaching the wisdom of life,
wow.
and also provide them a financial scholarship.
Fantastic.
Yeah,
fantastic.
so that's the main
Sounds
premise.
like a great show. Yeah. And anything exciting coming up? Any more Halo jumps or any more?
Actually, I'm going to Venezuela in October. Actually, not Venezuela. I'm going to French Guiana in October.
Yep.
When I was 12, this movie came out called Papillon. You know the story of Papillon?
No.
The story of Henry Charrière. Basically, France back in the 30s sent all their hardcore prisoners to French Guiana, similar to like what the Brits did, sending all their prisoners to Australia. So the French ran this colonial prison, and this prisoner called Henry Charrière, he was wrongly accused and wrongly imprisoned for about 35 years, and he escaped 9 times.
Wow.
The first 8 times were unsuccessful. He got captured, then he got put back in solitary confinement. But on his 9th attempt, he finally managed to rig a sack of potatoes, and he jumped off Devil's Island, up the cliff, and he, with the ocean currents, the ocean currents took him all the way to Caracas, Venezuela.
Wow.
So it's a great story about the perseverance, the human, just the, your persistence in regards to, your life and what have you.
Yeah.
So I'm going to sleep in his cell.
Wow. Okay. You're going to jump off the cliff with a sack of
No.
potatoes? No. Okay.
But I kind of think it'd be really cool because on the corner of his cell there's there's a drawing of a butterfly, because papillon in French means butterfly.
Right.
And Henry Charrière had this butterfly tattoo on his chest.
Okay.
But it's an amazing story of his life, and he outlived the prison because now the jungle has reclaimed the prison.
Yeah.
So you have to go for the jungle in order to find it.
Wow.
But and he lived the remainder of his life a free man.
Yeah.
So I just love the human spirit stories.
Yeah.
And for me, that's the next one coming up about October.
Yeah. No, that sounds fantastic.
Yeah.
Now, we're going to wrap up the show, but I wanted to leave on this note, which was where would you put your sort of top 6 values? Like if I was to say the top 6 values you have in life, what would be the number 1, number 2, number 3?
I would say, values. Well, for me, it's...
So it's like, some people would be like, freedom number 1 or adventure number 2. Or
for me, it's happiness first up.
Happiness?
Yeah, it's always happiness.
Yep.
When you script your own life, then you basically march into your own beat kind of thing. And for me, it's really, really important. I mean, I want to be around happy people. I'm a very positive person.
So number 2 for you would be?
For me, I want to maintain my health.
Yep.
I guess the integrity of my health.
Yep.
Number
3?
And I would say, having the foundation to be able to afford anything in the world is to throw me, I guess.
Yep. So to have that financial security.
But I like, but I also want to, I guess, emotionally inspire others too.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I wasn't born wealthy. I mean, I'm a son of poor Greek immigrant parents. Right. But I was born rich in that potential, I guess. Yeah. But but I've had ailments along the way too. Yeah. So I've had a lot of hurdles and obstacles I had to confront and combat, I guess. So for me, I like to inspire others now, in regards to like providing them a foundation or an idea or like an ideology for them to base their life upon, I guess.
Okay, fantastic. And I think that was number 6. Where would you do? Friends, family? Is it the edge, like learning? Is it exploring new things?
More wisdom, more knowledge,
more knowledge,
and just for me, I want to immerse myself in every country on this planet.
Yeah, wow. Well, Nik, it was fantastic to meet you.
Great.
Thank you very much for coming
awesome.
in, and I've thoroughly enjoyed this interview, and thank you.
Thank you very much.